Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the Lego Ninjago Movie. This is definitely the worst of the three so far Lego movies, although that's pretty universally kind of understood at this point. The main reason for that is I think what made the first two so exciting is this idea, this burst of creativity, this feeling that you're almost a kid playing with Legos. The feeling that animation has had, and Hayao Miyazaki even said it, that animation always has this feeling that anything could happen in a real freewheeling, wonderful, fun way. And those first two Lego movies really feel like that. They feel like fun, hilarious movies where anything can happen. And even though the first one, you go through various worlds, and I was worried about the Lego Batman movie, because you're only in Lego Gotham or just Gotham or whatever, that they wouldn't have the bursts of creativity, but they really did, and it was still a fun movie. The Lego Ninjago movie doesn't have that sense to it. It doesn't feel as fun. It feels more like the cynical, evil Lego selling its own brand kind of movie that we were all fearful of when they started making these movies, and the other films were kind of fighting that. They were like, well, yes, it's a giant toy commercial, but it's also a really good movie as well. Lego Ninjago is pretty much nothing but a toy commercial, but also manages to be a failed toy commercial at the same time. It's not like the worst movie ever, as Nolan from Pizza Party always says, if you're gonna be the worst, you should be the fucking worst. And the Lego Ninjago movie fails at really being a good movie and an interesting toy commercial, and it also fails at being so bad that it's awful and terrible, and it'll be like the Emoji Movie and we can all hate it or something. It's kind of like just sort of there and kind of just gets to the point of just sort of being nothing. One of those movies that if there were still physical media, really it would be in the dollar bin almost as quickly as it was released, because no one really loved the thing. When kids look back on this, be like, you remember the Ninjago movie? And go, I remember the show, and I watched the movie once. I don't know. It's not a film anyone's going to love because there's nothing really to gravitate to. Their characters are badly written. It's trying to recapture a moment from the show Ninjago, which this movie has no voices from and tries to be completely separate from, while also being based on a story from that, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. In fact, even using that is weird. Is this story like the Dark Phoenix saga of Ninjago or something? I don't know. Why do that for a show that happened probably 5 years ago, or aired 5 or 6 years, or whenever the fuck? It's fairly recent. It's under 10 years. When things like the Speed Racer movie or even the Brady Bunch movie or something does plot lines in their films, it's been a while and people are ready for that kind of nostalgia. I don't think someone who was 6 then and is 12 now is honestly that nostalgic for it, especially because I think it's on like some streaming service or something, I assume, somewhere. I've never watched the Ninjago show. I just read that that is a thing, and I thought that was kind of odd, because you're gonna make a movie that's sort of the show but also not, or something. Then like, why would you recycle a story that presumably most of your audience who actually wants to see this and knows about Ninjago and isn't just seeing it to see another Lego movie, who's seeing it for the brand of Ninjago, would already know? It's weird. And that's the thing with Ninjago. It doesn't feel like a kid's playing Ninjago. It feels very stilted and kind of stuck in that kind of normal kid show way, where you're sitting there thinking like, well, I know they're sort of thinking they're making references to certain things like kung fu films and various tropes and things like that, but it's kind of made by people who haven't actually seen those movies or understand those tropes. They just understand those tropes as it's been told to them through other people. So it's like trying to critique something that you've never really experienced, and so you get these kind of empty critiques in itself. That's the problem I have with a lot of animation or kids cartoons, really, is because oftentimes like they're parodying something and you're like, I don't know if you know the original thing. I think you're just going on this parody riff. And the interesting parodies, like Sesame Street does a lot of movie parodies, frankly, those work because when I've seen the movie they were parodying, there's all these jokes that are coming from it, and honestly they're a lot funnier and better than what this is. Having this weird like father-son relationship between the bad guy and Lloyd, who is really kind of the main focus of it. I don't know why this is called the Lego Ninjago movie. It should probably just be called the Lego Lloyd movie. It sort of reminds me of Big Hero 6 and the fact that you have a team but you're not utilizing them whatsoever. In fact, why have the team? Never really explains that. Is Lloyd like the Wolverine of this or something? Like, I don't really get it, and he's is not that interesting of a character. In fact, no one really is sort of the bad guy with like a bunch of arms, but I wouldn't even call him that. Like, everyone is very thinly written, and none of it's really performed well, which is kind of surprising considering the other two leads of this, a very pre-movie star Chris Pratt and Will Arnett, were really good at their voice acting, whereas Dave Franco, who is an actor I like a lot actually, just doesn't really do as well in a voice role like this. There's a lot of voice performances that I'm like, first of all, why did you cast this person, and what are you even doing with them? And they don't seem to know what they're doing with it either. It felt like they were trying to make these like kind of subpar parts and subpar dialogue into something, but they can't just like make magic happen. They can just make shit into gold, and that's sort of what they're asked to do, and that's sort of what I feel like this movie's doing. You know, even its supposed best joke where the cat attacks the Legos, I don't give a shit, it was in the trailer. Everyone's like, don't spoil it. I've noticed that's a big thing in these reviews. It was spoiled and the joke sucks, so like, who cares? Like, it's like sort of cute, but it'd be cuter if there was a sense of play to it. You know, it's like when the things like the crazy glue, the Craggle or whatever in the original Lego movie, that's funny because you don't see it coming and it's unexpected and plays into the kid's world and the kid's understanding. This is just like, hey, there's a cat, and it's like a real cat. And they have Jackie Chan in it doing kind of a framing device and having a voice. I'm not sure why Jackie Chan's doing so many animated films, also doing the nut job too. I wish he would be in like, you know, better animated films. I mean, I know he's in the Kung Fu Panda stuff, but this just feels like the kind of movie that's like how I felt about the Ratchet and Clank movie, where it's like, yes, I'm sure there's a fan base for this, but it doesn't feel like it gets out from that. And from what I'm understanding about this movie, I don't even think it really hits on the fan base. Like, why have all these celebrity voice actors when you have a TV show with voice actors that's maybe still running? I don't really know. Since most of the people who are seeing this are aware of your brand, why not bring that over and make a cheaper movie? Why have Kumail Nanjiani and Abby Jacobson and Justin Theroux and Dave Franco and Fred Armisen, all these people seem like sort of wasted, and it's like didn't really make a lot of sense to me why they're even in it when you have like people who have made their name or voice with the other TV show. Well, then why exactly did you make this? To sell toys? And that's really what this plays as. There's no really interesting animation. I've seen more interesting things in the other Lego movies. The only thing I really liked was like the shark guns and how they used the Lego sharks, and I remember those Lego sharks, and it was a fun thing, but it doesn't really have the sense of creativity, the sense of free willingness, the sense of a cartoon. And sure, it's sort of self-aware in that shitty, like, we're self-aware but we're not gonna, you know, say anything with it. Why be self-aware then? You're not really trying to say anything with this narrative, and the whole father relationship thing, or a main protagonist feeling isolated from society thing, seems to be a continual thing with the Lego movies. I don't know if that's like, you know, they have it written on a board, much like how the James Bond people have, like, you have to do the structure of Goldfinger every time. That's what they always preach to the screenwriters. I'm wondering if the Lego movies have a similar thing where they're like, well, here's the outline, here's how you make a Lego movie, and we do it this way. And this one felt like would get serious in places, which I really hated. It would get like less funny but then be really cartoony and silly, but it didn't seem to really understand the exact tone of what they were going for. And since they're not really saying much of anything other than like, this guy's an evil dad and like they're gonna joke about it or something, it just doesn't really work as well. It felt tired and boring, and it's not because we've had 2 Lego movies this year and we've had 3 Lego movies overall, because this doesn't feel like the idea of those Lego movies is tired. It feels like this film is taking tired ideas. I think you could still make another interesting Lego movie, whether it's the Jorge Gutierrez one or whichever one's next. I'm not gonna check, or Lego Movie 2 or something like that. It's like you could make a fun movie with the idea of play and the busting imagination of Legos, but Lego Ninjago doesn't have that. In fact, it just feels like a crappy toy commercial or a crappy commercial for a kid's TV show or something like that, and not even one that shows the best of it, just the one they feel that will appeal most to mainstream audiences. I never understand that idea. It's like, oh, this will appeal to mainstream audiences. I mean, maybe because of the success of these Lego movies, I sort of get where they're coming from, but I think it ultimately like just fails so completely. I mean, it's like sort of okay funny, but it's funny in that way that's like not funny haha, more in that you're telling a joke and I'm wasting away my time while watching you sort of a way. I don't like this movie. I don't really get why people are sort of going like, no, it's, you know, it's actually sort of good. It has this one joke and the father thing. I'm like, what are you even doing with it? The whole secret of art, I guess, is like not the actual thing you're doing, but your approach to that thing. And the approach to Lego Ninjago was boring, much like the Ratchet and Clank film. It felt like a cartoon I sat there, like I would when I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons. It felt like a cartoon I had to sit through between other shows. And as I watch, you know, even kid shows with my daughter, it felt like a show I would probably change the channel during. And if I was stuck on it, I'd watch it and go sure and maybe fall asleep. And it was hard, honestly, to stay awake during this. I didn't find it very entertaining or funny. And that's kind of a sad thing to think from a Lego movie. I've never thought of the Lego movies as not being entertaining. I find them bursting with entertainment. This is like the opposite boring Lego kind of movie that we all feared, and I kind of hope that they don't go back to doing stuff like this, really. The Ninjago series clearly is like really popular with kids, and I wish they had really exploited that and exploited what made that so popular, but I didn't really get that from this. I don't really understand why Ninjago was so cool. After the Lego movie, I didn't actually buy Legos, but I sort of got why someone would buy Legos. But after the Ninjago movie, I was like, I mean, I guess they're sort of like the Power Rangers or something. I don't really, it's kind of like whatever. It's sort of just the Lego whatever movie. You see it and you go, fine, whatever. I don't care anymore. I'll just wait for like a good Lego movie. And hopefully by that point, we'll all have forgotten about the bad taste that this film left in our mouths, or probably just my mouth, because everyone seems sort of more okay with it. It just feels like a film that will be forever regulated to being the related video next to whichever Lego movie is on whichever streaming service, and you'll go, oh yeah, I think what were the other ones? And this is just kind of the Incredible Hulk, or the most of those DC movies of the Lego movie franchise, where it just like doesn't really do anything for the franchise other than show the trappings of just kind of going after an exact toy line that Lego owns all the rights to, so they don't gotta pay no royalties to nobody. I'm not going to say that I really get it. It just feels like a bunch of other properties we've seen a bunch of other times, and it's not doing very much of anything with it. Lego Ninjago shows kind of like the creatively bankrupt side, kids' cartoons and kids' toys and things like that, where you walk into some kids' stuff and you're excited by the colors and how fun it is and the creativity, and you can't believe they did that. Lego Ninjago just makes me feel like, yeah, you know, of course. It wasn't surprising, it wasn't fun, really. It was just kind of like a standard variety kind of kids animated film, and sure, it was made with Legos, so that's neat, I guess. But so if you have seen the Lego Ninjago movie and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. Legos. Yep.